Women in Engineering YouTube channel, and you can watch the on-demand version of this webinar there. Okay, so our guest speaker today, Elizabeth Lyons. Let me tell you a little bit about Elizabeth. Elizabeth grew up in central New Jersey, about an hour from New York City, so she's an East Coaster just like me. She studied psychology at the University of Maine, and Elizabeth is the author of 2 books, Recession Proof Yourself and I Quit, Working for You Isn't Working for Me. Elizabeth is currently crafting her 3rd book on leadership as we speak. Her coaching practice is broken into 2 key areas. One is career management, and the second is leadership. Her credentials are very impressive, to say the least. They include being quoted in CBS Money Watch, Yahoo, The Ladders, and Dice job boards. And her words have reached as far and wide as the front page of the Philadelphia Tribune, CBS Money Watch, Dale Carnegie and John Tesh's blog, just to name a few. In 2013, Elizabeth, her radio show entitled Leadership Lessons from the Lioness was created through Plaid For Women, along with her articles. And a year later, she brought her leadership classes to Dubai. Her client list is also very impressive. It includes executives from AT&T, Microsoft, Wells Fargo, eBay, and Intel. Today, Elizabeth can be found writing, coaching, and collaborating with the who's who of the corporate America world, as well as abroad. And while she isn't working, Elizabeth can be found traveling across state lines with her husband on their Harley Davidson motorcycle or in the yoga studio, twisting for hours on end. If you would like to contact Elizabeth, just please visit her website, www.elizabethlyons, that's Lyons with an I.com. So without further ado, I'm going to kick it over to you, Miss Elizabeth Lyons.
Great. Thanks for the nice warm introduction. I'm really excited to be here at this week conference. Got lots to think about and hopefully talk about at the end of the presentation. This presentation has been given before with a lot of thought-provoking comments at the end, so I'm looking forward to seeing what you have to say as well. So what we're going to talk about today is money, and not just how to get more money, but how do you go about the negotiation with an employer, or if you're in a small business or a consulting firm, how do you go about negotiating in general? And what we're going to discuss specifically is why women in general ask for less money. And I've got some pretty shocking data points around this as well to kind of back up that statement. But overall, women typically ask for less money. We're going to talk about damaging words or phrases that you'd never want to use in a negotiation, and you probably don't want to use in the office either. We want to talk about how to ask for what you deserve without feeling awkward. Some women have told me that that's part of the issue, is they just don't know how to ask it or how to go about those conversations, and they do feel awkward. So we're going to talk about how to overcome that. And then we're really going to let's look at your views about money overall and how you got here, because that's really where this all starts out. So as David had mentioned, I am the author of a couple of books, Recession Proof Yourself and also I Quit, Working for You Isn't Working for Me. I've done a lot of work with the IEEE and with women in engineering over the years. My first article in the IEEE was launched in 2006, I believe, and then in 2009 I started doing webinars. So if you look in some of the archives of the IEEE, or if you just go to Google and you say, you went to Google and you said Elizabeth Lyons plus IEEE, you'll see all of my content there. Lots of video coming from me this year. I'm doing some more webinars. I'm doing some one-offs. I'm doing some Google Hangouts. We're even taping a couple of my presentations in the Dallas area, so you'll see some more video coming from me. I do specialize in working with women around career management. And what I mean by career management is how to find the right job, how to report to the right leader, where do you find a good boss, cover letter, LinkedIn, managing contacts, networking, all the way through offer negotiation. So that's what I kind of talk about career management. That's what I'm encompassing there. And I do specialize working with women in that topic and also leadership. I've got a leadership program especially for women that are new to leadership and they want to make sure that they're going in the right direction. You're more than welcome to contact me on LinkedIn, but please say that you saw me here because I don't accept all the LinkedIn invites that I get because I have too many of them, because I really do use my LinkedIn to network and to connect others. So if you do want to reach out, feel free to do that on LinkedIn and just say that you saw me here. And then lastly, I've got a third book coming out on leadership specifically for women. So let's get into this. So if you wouldn't mind, indulge me, write down this question, because after the presentation, it'd be great if you would mull over this. What were the very first things that you were told about money as a child? Many women tell me that they were taught things like money doesn't grow on trees. You have to work hard and you have to earn it. It's not easy to get, and when you have it, you have to save. That's very important. A couple of women in the audience when I gave this presentation said money wasn't spoken about at all in their homes ever. That was like a taboo subject. But whatever you were first told about money as a child made some sort of an impression on you all the way through to an adult. Like I said, jot down this question because this is thought-provoking for later and even after the presentation. After you grew up, you became an adult. You know, you went to college, you got a job, you went out there into the world. What specific feelings did you have around money? And were those actually adopted from the time you were a kid? It's good to kind of think about that. If you're married, how do you handle money? Is it in a joint account and it's shared? Do you have your own account? Do you like to save? Do you like to spend? Do you feel that money is a difficult thing to have, and when you have it, it slips quickly through your hands? How do you feel about asking for a raise? Does that make you break out into an absolute sweat? Or by the time you ask for that raise, you're really angry and you feel like you deserved it and you were overlooked? So again, jot this question down because I think it's thought-provoking for yourselves. As you move into this thing called negotiations, we want to see what is the thought process, what's going on around your mind around negotiations, around money from the time you're a kid to now, because that's something to look at. Because otherwise, all the tips and tricks or anything I can tell you about money isn't going to work until we kind of start to see what was the foundation that you had around this concept called money. And then the third question I'd like you to jot down is, why do you think women ask for less? And when I ask this to the audience, it's amazing the kinds of things that they'll share with me. They'll say, you know, they're afraid or they're unconfident. They don't know how to do it. Sometimes they think they don't deserve it, so they'll go in low. Some of them are afraid to ask for more. They don't think they'll deserve it. They don't think they'll get it, and they're like afraid to shoot out a high number. Many of them don't even know what's appropriate to ask for in terms of their career and their salaries, their titles, etc. So consider that. You know, why do women overall, not you, but why do women overall ask for less money? So here's some hard facts, and I was very fortunate that a reader of mine sent me some of this data, and it was very thought-provoking, so I put it in the presentation. So based on the median weekly earnings for full-time workers, in 2013, women earned 82.1% as much as men. So when you go to work and you sit next to an IT professional and he's a male, he makes more than you, but you got 82.1% of the 100% of the money that was offered for that position. Same title, same level, same industry, apples to apples, that's what it boils down to. 62.4% of husbands out-earn their wives in married couple families in which the wife had earnings. That means that only 37.6% of wives out-earn their husbands. So only 36% of women earn more than their spouse or are considered the breadwinners within the family. So that I found to be an interesting statistic. This kind of took the air out of me. I don't know if you're familiar with the San Jose Mercury publication, but that's a very well-read publication down in Silicon Valley, which is the high-tech mecca of the entire United States. It's considered the South Bay. And they came out with some really scary numbers. They said in 2014, men made a median salary of $90,000. Now keep in mind, Silicon Valley is the technical area of all of California, practically of all of the world. These are where all the high-tech companies are. That's where they reside primarily in the United States. And men made a median salary of $90,000, but women only made $56,000, and that was including them having a bachelor's. This frankly shocked me because it's extremely expensive to live in the San Francisco Bay Area, let alone Silicon Valley. So take a look at those numbers and how disproportionate they are. For graduate degrees, you know, advanced degrees, men made $125,000 compared to women making $83,000. These numbers are shocking, frankly. it made me start to think about, what are the biggest mistakes that I've seen women make in terms of money overall. And I'd like to tell you a quick story to really kind of reemphasize this. A couple of years ago, I hired a woman that was a vice president into a technical field, into a technical company. And we get down to the last part of the interview, and I always ask them, what do they make and how much do they want to make? And we do this in the initial parts of the interviews. We do not negotiate at the end. That's absolutely not what we do. We need to know what numbers are we talking about. Is it within the rec range? Is it within budget? And then I can either guide them or tell them that, we're out of the ballpark and then they need to look at some other position. Anyway, I asked the question, how much do you make? And she comes out of the gate with, I made $150,000 plus a 15% bonus. And I said, great, Cheryl, what would you like to make moving forward? And there's this long pause, awkward pause I might add, and she said, she started doing this funny dance, like, well, I don't really know, and I just want what's fair, and I certainly want to go back to work. And, I listened to this very high-level executive woman not be able to handle a negotiation. And I thought, how did you even get to $150,000 a year? I mean, and why can't we talk about it now? So, I mean, why is this difficult? But it was all for her about being fair and getting what was right, and it just shocked me that a woman with those kinds of credentials, who also had a minor in finance, stumble around this thing called money. So I said to her, look, Cheryl, you've got to come out with a number. I'm just going to be transparent with you. You have to throw out a number for me. Just tell me what it is. What is it? And she just locked up, and she said, I just don't know. And I thought, okay, here we go. Let's do a math exercise. I said, take 10% of $150,000 on the base. What's that? She came up with a number. I said, is that the kind of increase you want to make? Instantly, no, that's not what I want to make. Okay, 15% on the base, 12% on the base, 13% on the base. What number on the base salary do you want to come in at? If you're going to take another position and you would like a slight increase, what is that number? And I'm not kidding you. We did simple math right there on the phone. I got the number. I wrote it down. She went to offer, and she got every penny of it. Now, shame on her for not having it together prior to that conversation. And shame on any woman who can't say, I make X, and I'm looking to make a progression on my weight and my career, and I'm looking for positions that are X. I make whatever it is. I make $80,000 to take another position. I'm looking for $90,000 on the base, or whatever the numbers are. But it's very important that women are able to articulate that and say that in a calm manner that doesn't get them all twisted up inside, but also for the audience they're talking to that, it's just a conversation around numbers. It's a fine conversation to have. So all of that got me thinking, and here's what it boils down to, the 7 biggest mistakes that I've seen women make in terms of money. So the first thing is exactly what happened with Cheryl, was she didn't understand her worth in terms of money. And when I mean worth, I'm talking about her market worth, not her emotional, what she thinks she deserves worth. Absolutely park that. That is no business in business, frankly. Don't get all tied up in that, because that's going to make the whole conversation go sideways. She didn't understand what her position pays. So in every position out there, there's a salary band. So for example, for a director level position, it's on the base salary, say 130 to 150. And you need to know what that is. For different IT positions, there are salary bands. It's usually a $30,000 spread. Understand where you fall on that spread and understand how much more you have to go until you go into the next bump of the title. So you need to understand what is it worth? This title equals X, what is that? And the biggest mistake women make is they don't know. The second biggest mistake is what the mistake Cheryl made, was she thought that the money is her. She thought it was absolutely about her. It wasn't about her skill set. It wasn't about her performance. It wasn't about 20-some-odd years she had behind her. It was about her personally, and that's when things start to go sideways. It's not about you personally. It is zero to do with you personally. It's money. It's about a skill set and what it commands out in the market. That's it. If you can become that unemotional about money, things tend to go smoother. Taking the actual negotiation conversation personally can be a problem too. In other words, if you start to get fearful or defensive, although I've never once encountered a woman that was defensive about money, ever. I find they get fearful, afraid to ask or afraid to say the number, but again, I don't see them getting defensive. I do see that with men when they negotiate, because it goes back to bullet point number 2. They think the money is them, so they think they should get more. Women, typically I don't see that, but taking the actual negotiation conversation personally with the person you're talking with, or whether it's your boss or you're going out and looking for another job, if you start to get an emotional kind of response around that, that's going to be a mistake. The next piece that I want to address is choosing a poor time to make a deal or to ask for a raise. So women can sometimes fall into this category where they work very, very hard for a long period of time, and they think that if they keep sitting at their desk, someone, somewhere, hopefully their boss, will notice them. And their boss magically will come over to them on a Thursday afternoon and say, gee, you know, you've worked really hard. Here's another $15,000. And that never happens, and so the woman continues to sit in the job and to get more and more disgruntled and very angry, and then it's really bad. She goes to the bitter place. And then she finally, you know, musters up this courage, this gusto, and she's going to go in and she's going to ask for this money tomorrow morning, and she's had it. And that can get you in trouble. So if you don't really choose your timing as to where you ask for the raise, you're not being sensitive to where your boss is, you're not being sensitive to what the company's going through. And clearly, if they've just done a round of layoffs, not a good time to ask for a raise, right? Or if they're doing a bunch of acquisitions, probably not a good time to ask for a raise. So timing is another place where women can kind of make a mistake around money. This is a big one. Not able to throw out the first number and not flinch. You know, you've got to be able to do that. You know when the number is high enough when you can say it and you're uncomfortable, and then you have to keep practicing saying it. When you're saying it out loud in the car, driving to work, or you're saying it in front of a mirror, you know, being able to say it and hold it and not speak after you say the number. That's what I mean by not flinch, which goes to the second bullet point. Can you sit in silence after you throw out that number? And that's important too. So if you say, I make $80,000, and in order for me to make a job move, I need to make 90. Stop talking. Right there, stop talking. That's a pivotal point. Silence is just silence. Silence does not mean no either. It usually means the person on the other end is thinking about it. So get comfortable with silence. Get comfortable with your end of the negotiation, what you're going to say, and then you're going to stop talking. The other big mistake that people in general, but I do see it with women, is they'll try to do a negotiation on the phone or in email. It's not a direct conversation. If at all possible, you definitely want to look eye to eye to the person you're doing the negotiation with, if at all possible. You definitely want those sorts of things out of email. You want to be able to look at them, get the body language feedback, get those sorts of nonverbal cues, and understand kind of where you're at in the negotiation. I wrote an article about this, and I actually did a radio show on leadership lessons from the Lioness just a couple of weeks ago. If you email me directly, I'll get you the link. And it talks about this exact slide. It talks about things that women say in the office or in business that actually diminish them. And these are the kinds of things you don't want to say in or around a negotiation, or like I said, even in or around an office. And the article that I wrote made a lot of traction, and also the radio show kind of blew up the phone lines as well. So if you want to hear Sarah and I live on that, I'm happy to send you that link. But this is exactly what it comes down to. So women tend to ask permission before they speak. So to give you an illustration of what this looks like, maybe you have a gathering of 2 or 3 people. A woman is one of them, could be 2 other men or another male and a female. And she's listening to what's going on in the conversation, and then all of a sudden she'll interject when everybody's done talking, and she'll say, do you mind if I add something? You don't have to ask permission to speak as a woman. You don't have to ask permission to speak at all, male, female, whatever. I mean, you just don't need to do that. And interestingly enough, men don't ever do this, ever. I mean, what I always suggest is don't believe a thing that goes on here in this presentation. Just watch one staff meeting with men and watch how they engage and how they talk with each other and how that goes on. But you will find they never interrupt each other and say, can I say something, or, you know, those sorts of things. They also don't apologize. You know, women do this, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Oh, I apologize. Well, really, unless you like plowed into somebody's car and put a big dent in it, you have no reason to be sorry. And you will find that men don't do this. Did you ever find, you know, the CEO of Microsoft stand up and say, I'm really sorry we missed our quarterly numbers. I'm really sorry. I just, you know, I might not have all my facts together. No, they don't say they're sorry. But why do women do that? There's no reason. It discredits you. It diminishes you. There's no point in that. So if you're saying that in a conversation, please stop saying that. Women can also not be very definitive. And they'll say things like, I hope this proposal meets your needs. Perhaps this might be the way to go with this. You don't want to do that. You want to be kind of direct and definite. You want to be very clear in what you're saying. Again, it goes back to the I'm sorry and do you mind sort of stuff. You want to be definite as a woman. And there's ways to do that, to be calm and poised and confident without becoming aggressive. Mincing words. This is another pet peeve of mine. Let's say, here's how this one looks. Let's say you have a direct report. You have somebody that reports to you, and they're not performing, and you've kind of had it, and you're getting to the point where you're about to put them on a performance plan or something. You don't want to address them and say things like, I'm a little bit concerned about your performance. You're not a little bit concerned, because that's not even true. You're concerned, right? You don't want to try to. You don't want to hope. You don't want to perhaps. You don't want to mince. What I think women do is they're trying to soften the blow or soften whatever they're going to deliver. You don't need to do that. It goes back to being definite and kind of firm and confident. Sarah and I really talked about this last bullet point quite a bit on our show. Women will sometimes ask questions they know the answers to, and they're really trying to do is be collaborative, and they're trying to get this group mentality in a conversation, which is fantastic. But what they end up doing is they ask these questions that they already know the answers to. So they'll, you know, listen to, let's say, a bunch of information, and then they'll stop at the end and say, isn't that right? Or what do you think? Or, you know, there's time and place for that. What do you think? It has a time and a place for it. But when you already know and you've already heard all the information, you don't need to go back over it. And again, I think women do that with the intention of being sensitive and collaborative, and it backfires in terms of perception. So here we go back to negotiation. So another question you may want to jot down is, why do women do that? You know, why would she ever not be definite, ask questions she knows the answers to? Why would, you know, apologize, say she's sorry? Why would she ever do that, particularly when it comes to money? And I think that's worth looking at, and I think that's worth consideration. And what I found was what it tends to boil down to is doubt and fear. Women have huge doubts about themselves. I had one executive woman look at me. She went through my leadership program. She almost had tears in her eyes, and she said, I just don't know if it's enough. And I said, well, what do you mean? She said, I'm just so spread out, so thin. You know, I'm trying to be a good wife and a good mother and an executive and a daughter and, you know, an active person in my church, and, you know, and I feel like I'm falling short everywhere. A lot of doubt creeps in for women. And fear around asking for the money. They never seem to feel if they'll get it, which is kind of funny to me, but they were afraid to actually ask for it. There's a lot of apprehension around that. And this very sad thing about it, if you look at the statistics, we lose some phenomenal women in technology right around the age of, you know, I would say between 30 and 40. Once they have their first child, they start to look at the office and say, you know, what am I really doing here? I don't really want to be doing this anymore. I'm in a male-dominated world. It's difficult. I don't even know if I'm paid fairly or I'm not paid fairly. You know, and they kind of lose they lose all that wonderful energy they had when they started the field. And it's a shame because women in technology, particularly women in engineering, have a phenomenal voice and a tremendous ability to make an impact. I mean, a few years ago, I'm sure you saw the studies. They showed how a woman's brain is wired differently than a man's brain, and how it lights up and how a male's brain lights up. And when you have, a female sprinkled in an engineering team, you get different solutions. You get different perspectives of the problems, and you get different answers to it. Many years ago, I had an engineering manager that asked me privately if he would find me a female engineer, and I said, by law, I can't do that. I have to be fair and equitable. He said, I know, but this is just, off the cuff and conversational, but I really would like a female or two in my team of 25 because she comes up with different ideas in that meeting. Inevitably, she does. And the guys also tend to simmer down. They will act a little differently in a group with a female present. I found that to be a very interesting comment. So I think it really boils down to us, what's really going on within our minds, because the doubt and the fear is really something that just happens in your mind. So that's the good news that I want to bring to all of you today. It's just a thought. That's it. It's just a thought. Even if the thought is, I'm afraid to ask for the money. It's a thought. It's not a fact. Nothing's going to hurt you. It's something that goes on in your mind. Same way about money itself, the ideas that you had money itself as a child. Those are just thoughts. You don't necessarily have to identify with those thoughts. They're just thoughts. It's in your mind. So if you work with what's going on in your mind around money, around negotiations, around working in this field called engineering, and you explore that and you look at that, what you might find is some solutions to how you got there. What you might find is some solutions to, I thought it was the company I worked for. I thought it was the man I reported to, and what I'm finding is it's really my thoughts about me and about money that's inhibiting me to get a little bit further, and maybe that's worth looking at. So here's some of the thoughts that women have shared with me that they think around money. They'll think things like, I had a bunch of accountants, women accountants tell me that the good girl shouldn't ask for the money. It wasn't nice if you were a female to ask for more business or to ask for money at all. It wasn't polite. And girls should be polite. We're taught that from the time we're little. Because if you're not polite, then, heaven forbid, you could be called some name or something, and we don't want that. Women will say to me in a negotiation conversation, I don't really need more money. So, for example, if they go through my career coaching practice and we're talking about money, inevitably at second session, I look at them and I say, you do realize that you're underpaid. And it's shocking to me how many women have no idea that they're underpaid. Because my male clients that go through the career counseling, at second session, they will lean across the table at Starbucks and they'll whisper, how much do you think I can get? Every time. But a woman never does that. And sometimes it's like brand new information that she's underpaid. And I'll say, oh, I don't know. I don't know if I could get that. Do you really think so? Yeah, I do. I mean, I look at the market every day and you're way underpaid. I've had women actually say back to me, I don't need more money. Well, that's great. But what happens when life dictates that you might need more money? What happens if, heaven forbid, your husband died? Or somebody in the family had a health issue and that cost money to get treatment, or whatever it is. I mean, you don't need more today. My response to that is get what's fair in your wage, get that money. I don't care if you save it. I don't care if you give it away to a charity, but if the position pays from point A to point B, make sure you're paid fairly and you don't sit at a low wage for a period of time. I've had other women say to me, I'm not comfortable with this, greedy. How much do I really need? And to me it goes back to, then give it away. I mean, I do that, frankly. I give away lots of money all the time. I have no problem doing that. Because there is a point where, do you need more? No, your rent, your house is your mortgage is paid, right? The lights are on, you've got a couple bucks in the bank, you bought a new pair of shoes, or you bought the purse or whatever it is that you want. You don't need more. That's fine. Save it, give it away, what have you. The other thought that women have around money is bad. There's this whole demographic going on out there that says money is bad, rich people are bad, Republicans are bad, fill in the blanks, whatever it is. They're all bad, and it's bad because they have money. And that's not true. Money is nothing. Money is just a green piece of paper. It's nothing more, nothing less. It's what you attach to that money is what makes you think things about it. But if somebody has a tremendous amount of money, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're a good person or a bad person. It's just how it shook out for them. There is no, extra points you get in life stating that it's, pious to be poor or poorer. And that whole concept is very disturbing to me. Again, it goes back to the good news is it's in your mind. Look at what's in your mind around money. How did you grow up around money? What are your thoughts as an adult? Do you want to hold on to those? I think that's the biggest question in the presentation. Do you want to hold on to the thoughts you have about money? And if you do, okay. And if you don't, these are some of the things that might be worth examining. Wait a minute, I'm going to back up the slide for 1 second. The last bullet point, I trust I'm paid fairly. Why would you do that? Go get some data around your title and the industry and what it really pays. Don't trust your boss or anybody else to tell you what you should be paid. That's something that you want to know as women. Now, it's not hard. I mean, money is out there. It's floating out there. It's this thing that goes on. It was printed a long time ago. So it's not a definition of who you are or your character. There's no reason to not receive money. I'll tell you a quick little story about when I was a little girl, which impressed me and to my utter delight helped me to grow up to be who I am and in front of you today on this global webinar. I was probably about 8 years old, and my grandmother would always give me little bits of money, like 50 cents or a quarter or a dollar or what have you. And I guess I was 8 or 9 years old, and I realized something jogged in my mind that said, she's an old woman giving me money, and that's probably a bad thing. I shouldn't take money from my grandmother, was the thought. That, like, I'm a kid, I got whatever I need, I shouldn't take this money. And so she handed me whatever it was, the dollar or the quarter or whatever, and she said, here, Elizabeth, here's some money. And I said, no, thank you. And she said, she looked at me because I'd never done that before, and she said, take the money. And I said, no, I'm okay. And she looked at me, and it was the only time I ever saw her get angry with me. And she looked at me, and she kneeled down, her eyes narrowed, and she said, take the money. When somebody gives you money like this, your response is thank you, and that's it. And I'll tell you, it changed me for the rest of my life. My grandmother had some definite places in my life that really taught me a lot about money and what it really meant. I remember as a child going into the bank over and over again. Going into the bank was like a normal thing, seeing them save, having them hold me as a child as they made a bank transaction and watching the slip come across and seeing them save or seeing them make a deposit. That was a normal thing that I remember very clearly as a child. The same grandmother, when I was, probably a little younger than 8, gave me a coin purse. On the front of the coin purse, it said mad money. I was like a kid, right? I was like 7, 8 years old. I was like, what is mad money? I don't even get it. What is that? She goes, oh, mad money. It's like your secret stash. It's yours, That's just for you. And I thought, oh, okay, that's interesting. So these are the concepts I grew up around money. And isn't it funny? I ended up being, before the books and the speaking and everything else, I ended up being a very prominent headhunter, negotiating tens of thousands of dollars of wages for men primarily in corporate America and engineers particularly. So it's just funny that, they couldn't do it, but I could do it for them. And then over time, I was trying to do it for myself as well. So again, I can't emphasize enough. Go back to your thoughts around money and where did you get them? Where did they come from? Here's another little tidbit to consider. Particularly the men that I've worked with, they don't ever think that money or the negotiation is this personal thing. Interestingly enough, they think their resume is personal. Because if I try to tweak the resume or change it, and look, if you let me, I'm a writer. You got me to work with here. You're lucky. Like I'll write your resume and you'll get more calls. And if I start to tweak things in the resume, move things around, that bothers them. They think the resume is who they are personally, but they never think the negotiation the money is. And because they go into negotiations with those sorts of thoughts, they always ask for more, and they usually get it. They feel that they have a right to the money. There's some very interesting things that go on in a man's mind around money and negotiations and getting the job and negotiating that don't happen within women. So that's something to consider too. So we're going to try a whole new approach. Okay, so go home, look at those 3 questions, mull them around in your mind, and then this is the new approach that you could adopt moving forward. First thing I want you to do is get some education around your worth and your competition. So I want you to look at your title right now and figure out, get some data, talk to somebody in HR, talk to somebody in another company. What are they paid and what are you paid? Get some idea of what that salary band is. And then understand, you know, where are you within that band? So if the job, again, pays from 80 to 90, are you paid 85, or are you paid 87, or what are you paid within that band? Because then you're going to want to think, do I want to make another title bump, or maybe you want to stay there? But you just want to educate yourself around what your market worth is. Now, if you have a small business or a small consulting firm, this next bullet would apply. You want to understand, where do you sit in the market? Now, this does not apply to you if you're in corporate America in a job, but if you're out there as a consultant, you know, selling your services or your product or whatever it is, this is important to understand. Where do you sit in the market? So are you Walmart? Are you Target? Are you Nordstrom's? You can't be all 3. And sometimes if you're very lucky, the market will actually dictate to you what you are. And there's plenty of business at Walmart. There's no shame in being Walmart. So high volume, low price. And there's no shame in being Target, right? Reasonable price, medium-sized margin. And Nordstrom's is more of an exclusive high-dollar market. But you need to understand, if you're out there in consulting, where are you? And price yourself accordingly. You want to be ready to overcome any kind of objections in a negotiation. You want to be ready. You want to be ready to, whatever you think they're going to say, no, here's why. You want to be ready to have those. And you want to write down objections if you're hearing them over and over again. Now this goes for if you're selling a service or a product, or if you're in corporate America. If you're turned down for the promotion, why are you turned down? What is that really about? And how do you get to where you want to go? So whatever the objection is, make sure you get it and you really flesh it out, and then you're prepared to give some alternatives. Part of the new approach is also going to be using definitive language when you're negotiating. You know, being able to throw that number out and sit in silence. Let them think, you know, rock back, be respectful, give them some breathing room. You have to understand and know your bottom line number, and you got to be ready to walk away from it if they're not going to meet you there. If you're going to go in at your bottom line number, then you had better be getting some other things that are maybe non-monetary value. So for example, if you're in corporate America, you're looking for a job, you know, you want to make 90, they're going to come in at 86. Well, you got to make sure that if you take that 86, what else is there? Is there a great healthcare plan? You know, is there a low deductible there? Will they pay for education? Let's say you want to go back and get a credential, like your PMP or a certificate or whatever it is. Will they pay for that? Okay, now we've made up some difference there between the number you wanted to be at and where you're actually going to take. So be prepared, and be prepared to walk away if it's not enough. So in summary, and I know I've said this several times in the presentation, I want you to think about your thoughts around money, and I want you to think about how can you change those thoughts. You know, get good at identifying them and watching them and, you know, asking yourself, does this fit now? Does this serve me to think this way? I mean, how can I see it differently is the question. And to make friends with your finances. You know, make friends with money to have that sort of an easier, lighter relationship around money. So this is the final slide and my contact information. If you have any questions, you're more than welcome to email me directly. I'd love to hear from you. I do encourage you to go check out my website at elizabethlyons.com. There's some great stuff on there. If you'd like to connect with me personally, I suggest LinkedIn above all. I've done some articles there as well. You may want to follow some of my work on there. And then if you ever want a clip from one of the radio shows, they're all for women, about women, all around leadership and work. I'm happy to send you some of those. It's through Plaid For Women, and it's my own show called Leadership Lessons from the Lioness. So that concludes our time today, and I want to thank you all of you for your attention.
Thanks, Elizabeth. That was great, and we have a handful of questions here in about 15 minutes worth of time, so I'm hoping we can get to all of them. Are you ready?
Okay. Yeah, I am.
Okay. So the first question that came through actually was more of a clarification. You spoke earlier about a study on wage figures, and one of the participants today was wondering if that was just for technical women or if those wage figures were for all women in general.
Great question. It was all the women in general, but remember, this data is coming out of the San Jose Mercury, where most of the tech jobs are. So my sense is, you know, probably it's for all women, but it's coming out of that area and that demographic.
Very good. Okay, thanks for clearing that up. Another question that came through the Q&A. What sources do you use to compare wages? I've personally used the IEEE salary survey and Glassdoor, but I'm curious where you get your numbers from.
You know, the best way that I do it, because these things change very slightly, I always Google it. I Google it and I look for those salary comparisons and maybe the top 2 or 3 boards, and I jump on those. And I get it from a couple of different places and cross-reference. Sometimes the numbers can get muddied. Or the titles get skewed. What you're called in a big company like Microsoft, some other company doesn't even have that title, right? It doesn't translate. So you want to get as close to it as you can. And then the other big piece you want to look at is not necessarily the salary guides, but also the industry, because industries will pay a little bit different. For example, financial services will pay more than, say, manufacturing, typically across the board.
Okay, Elizabeth, next question. This one's really good. I recently read a study on negotiations. In the study, it said that if women had the personality of being warmer and friendlier, that they were more expected to be easily fooled. Have you found this to be the case?
Absolutely, without question, yes. I mean, because there's this thing that goes on that says, oh yeah, maybe she'll take less. Yeah, and I would agree. So when you go back to these slides, even when you hear me, you hear my voice, you can feel me. When you look at the video on my site, you get a sense of who I am. There's something there. So if I throw out a number, that's it. And I don't know that it's about being warm or friendly. I think it's about being definite and confident. It's just about knowing your stuff. I mean, you're all good engineers. It's facts. If I can get you into facts and out of feeling, that's a good place to go when you're talking about your career and your money.
Okay, Elizabeth, question number 4. In many cases, women who may have been able to, through either activism or being outspoken, gain their place at the table in corporate America, so to speak. But my question is, once they are, how can they create an atmosphere for them to have a good outcome and remain at the table? Can you address that?
Yeah, I can. That's a great question. Boy, whoever that is, love it if you email me as well. Really great question. We could go on a chat about this for quite some time. You do have to earn a seat at the table, and the question is, like, how do you stay there? You just continue with the same kind of performance, but you're always watching. You watch this landscape because the players change. So who's in power in that room? Who's in power in the company, right? You're watching those things because you might have to adjust your style to some of that. I was lucky. I don't know if I was lucky. Part of it was I earned it. I earned the seat at the table, and I continue to have the seat at the table. And I continue to be like this advisor to to some very powerful men in corporate America. And you go, well, how do you do that? You're like 5 feet tall, this little blonde thing. How do you do that? So it's about, you know, having your facts, having your stuff, being calm and poised, knowing timing. For me, it's intuitive, knowing when to speak, knowing when not to speak, watching who's the power in the room, who's the guy with the power in the room, what's going on there. Does he not like women? Because maybe he doesn't like me and he doesn't like my approach, right? Yeah, I'm always watching that sort of stuff, because if I need to be a chameleon so that I can navigate this thing and get it to go where I want it to go and stay there, then that's where I'm going to be.
Okay, here's another really good one. Don't younger women ask for what they want just as much as men? In other words, you know, isn't this something that just women in their 40s and older need to worry about? Isn't this just a baby boomer problem, Elizabeth?
Great question. Not really. I mean, I had a woman go through my practice that was 35 years old, and her first concern was, how do I sync up to a female boss, because this might kill me. I was given the promotion, I was recommended for the role, and I don't want to detonate this whole thing. So she came to me for coaching around that, and during the course of that, she said, you know, I think I want to make this much. How do I get there? And, you know, she was young. She was early to mid-30s. She wasn't any more than 35. I want to say she was 33. So I don't think so. I mean, what you're kind of dancing around, and there is some of this, is entitlement. You know, the younger generations, there might be some entitlement, thinking that they deserve more, but that really shows up around, you know, they'll come into the office and they'll be in their position a year, and then they'll think they should be in management. Or, I mean, I've had professors tell me they think they're going to graduate from college and go directly into management. They don't understand that they have to work their way up. That does play out. But overall, in general, I've worked with women from 30 to 55, and a lot of them, it makes them very uncomfortable to ask for money.
Okay, Elizabeth, we have, the questions just keep coming in. I got 4 more questions here. We got about 10 minutes, so I'll go in no particular order here.
Hot topic, David, hot topic.
Elizabeth, once you've made the request and what you have asked for has been granted, down the line you see that things haven't quite turned out the way that you had hoped. How can you hold men accountable in negotiations? That's a good one.
Ooh, very good. Now, I'm assuming that you got the money and that maybe you didn't get all the job duties. So that would be my first question. Did you get the money, or did they say, well, now you have to do all this stuff and then you get the money? If it's that scenario, you know, you ask one more time. You go in. It's like a proof source. You go in on September 25th, you told me I could have this position if I did all these things. I have done all these things. You know, make sure you're on top of it, because sometimes they're just busy. It doesn't mean that you're not going to get it. They're just busy. They don't know. Make sure you have one-on-ones with this person, or at least quarterly meetings, talking about the goals that you're reaching them. You know, the only reason I've seen a man doesn't give a woman money is if it's a budget issue. Typically, if she's proven herself, they had the conversation, she's doing it, she goes back and says, look, I've done it. Unless the company flat out doesn't have money, typically she gets it. If she does all that and he's still giving you promises, it's time to look outside of the organization.
Okay, Elizabeth, next question. Won't women impede their chances at advancement, if they start asking for everything and negotiating left and right? Wouldn't this cause a backlash?
Good question, but I mean, I think, you know, I mean, what is your suggestion? You sit, rock back, and wait to get noticed? Shouldn't you minimally have some data, some facts around what you're paid, and understand where you fall in that range? And then to start to have negotiations and to start to talk about that and think about it makes sense. You're only going to negotiate a couple times. One is when you're going for the new job, and the second time would be, you know, during the annual review, which may or may not happen then, depends where the company's at. Usually it's not the person's performance, but, you know, to have no idea what you're paid and to sit around waiting for it to be handed to you will leave you bitter.
So you're saying almost to maintain your aggressiveness, if you will, but be intelligent about it, intelligently aggressive.
Be intelligent. Just have your facts. You're all engineers. Have your facts. I mean, whatever your feelings are around all this, you need to park it because it's got no business. It's got no business in business. So, you know, it's facts. It's money. It's, you know, the wage equals the salary. The wage equals the title. Always, always, to the end of time. That's what it is. And then it's how long have you done that? You climb and you create an entire ladder by time in the saddle, and gathering skill. That's it. So there is no emotion around it when you look at the system and how it's set up in every company across the globe. That's how it goes.
Okay, this next question, Elizabeth asks, how can women know when it's appropriate to ask for something when it really isn't? I guess what are some of the signs that can let a woman know when maybe it's time to kind of back off a bit?
You know, the one thing I always tell women is you're good at being sensitive. Typically, women are. So, you know, don't go running in at 8:35 before your boss has had their first cup of coffee and their jacket taken off and start talking about your salary. You know, schedule a time. And then even during that time, pay attention. I mean, are they rolling from meeting to meeting? Are they preoccupied when they're talking to you? Are they half checking their email? I mean, where are they at? Are you this really small thing on their to-do list? Or are they really taking it in and engaged? Those sorts of things is what you want to intuitively pick up on. And if you're getting the sense that their head's not in the game and you're not getting the attention, you might professionally say, hey, look, you look really busy. This is important to me. Can we reschedule this? So, you know, don't do it on Friday afternoons, right? You know, don't do it Monday morning at 8:35. Those sorts of, you know, real common sense stuff that you want to probably stay away from.
Okay, Elizabeth, this is looks like our last question, and then I'll take us out here. It's a good one. It's a little plug for you. How is your book different from the scores of all the other negotiation books that I have read or know about? So how can you tell us about your book and why it stands out?
So I didn't write a book on negotiations. I speak about it, and I have it in a couple of different chapters in both Recession Proof Yourself and I Quit. I think, honestly, my presentation tells you how it's different. I think my background is what's different. There's tons of stuff out there, but, you know, how many people have, you know, been a headhunter in huge companies for a lot of years? I've got 15 years of staffing behind me, and now I'm developing leaders and those sorts of things. The other thing I think where my information is vastly different is you'll find a lot of coaches, authors out there. That's a trendy thing. I wrote a book in 2009 where nobody had done that, and I'm a writer, but I'm also in the trenches. So when I'm talking about negotiations, when I hang up this call right now, my next meeting is with the vice president. And I know what he's hiring, and I know what he's paying, and then I'm going to go to the next call. You know, so it's real-time data that I'm in, and it's almost like I'm a reporter that I'm out in the field, and I'm sharing these concepts. That's what makes both books so different. The first book was actually dedicated to engineers. Recession Proof was actually dedicated to engineers. And there's a lot of conversations I've had with engineers around getting fired, getting hired, you know, their careers, et cetera.
Awesome, awesome. Great audience participation there. And Elizabeth, thank you for a great presentation. I have to let everybody know we're going to wrap up. This is going to conclude today's webinar on negotiation strategies and tactics for women. I want to thank our guest speaker, Elizabeth Lyons, for taking the 1 hour time out of her day to speak to us, and for your audience participation. You guys are really engaged out there. I really appreciate it. If you want to revisit today's session, if you missed a portion of it, or you just want to enjoy it again for a second time, this is going to be available on demand on the Women in Engineering IEEE YouTube channel. So check it out there in the coming days. This session delivered today by Elizabeth, again, is a session which is part of a larger series of events for the Women in Engineering International Leadership Conference out in San Jose that's taking place right now. For more information on this session or other virtual tracks, go to the Women in Engineering International Leadership Conference website. And again, I just want to thank the Women in Engineering team, the committee, the audience for their participation today, and most especially Elizabeth for taking the time out of her day for today's session. Thanks, Elizabeth, and thank you, everybody. Have a great day.